Hi Liza Lions, it's me, your art teacher, Miss Quitzel. I hope you're enjoying your extended spring break. I know I am, but I am assuming if you guys are anything like me, you're probably a little bored right now. There is no better time than right now to start working on brushing up our art skills. And that's what I'm doing right now with this video. My goal is to make a couple video lessons that you guys can follow along with. That way, in addition to the online classes you're going to be doing soon, you get to have a little bit of art class as well. Now clearly, we don't have access to our Liza Jackson art room right now, which means we don't have access to a lot of our normal art supplies. And that's okay because all the projects I'm going to show you only require the bare minimum. Whatever stuff you happen to have around your house, for instance, instead of using fancy paper, I'm just going to be using printer paper. You can use regular old Sharpies or pencils or black markers, and you can color in these projects using whatever you already have around the house. For instance, I'm going to be using these cute little pipsqueaks, but you could use crayons, you could use colored pencils, and if you're lucky enough to have paint, you could even use paint for these projects. So I'm going to give you a minute to grab some supplies, and then we are going to start making our first project. Our first project is called Liza Lions, and this is a project I like to do in kindergarten. So you might have done this project before, but maybe you weren't with us in kindergarten and missed it, or maybe it's been so long you've just totally forgotten it. Either way, you're going to be good to go. Now, this project usually requires giant pieces of manila paper, oversized Sharpies, oil pastels or crayons, and lots of tempera paint. But since I don't have access to hardly any of that stuff, I'm just going to be doing the project with Sharpie and computer paper and my markers. So, if you've got your supplies, let's get started. Hey guys! So you should have a piece of paper in front of you. If the paper is square or whatever, then it doesn't really matter how it's sitting in front of you. But if your paper is like this printer paper and has some sides that are longer and some shorter sides, making it a rectangle, you're going to want to turn it in what we call portrait mode. This is going to be a portrait. Now, portrait pictures have a shorter side on the top and on the bottom. So we are going to make sure our paper is turned the proper way. We don't want it like this. This is landscape mode. We're not doing landscape today. We want it portrait style. Now that you have your paper in the right arrangement, take your drawing tool of choice. I'm going to be working with Sharpie. I personally like to draw out these projects with Sharpie because when you're using Sharpie, you just kind of have to commit to whatever lines you're drawing. But if you're more comfortable with using pencil, that's also a-okay. Just be careful not to get too caught up in erasing and redrawing lines over and over and over again. Now, one good thing about us using video instead of being in the middle of art class is in real life you couldn't pause me if I'm going too fast. But if I'm going too fast in the video, you can pause me until you catch up, or you can even rewind the video and re-listen to the instructions. So that makes things pretty easy. There's always a silver lining, isn't there? Alright, I've got my Sharpie and I'm going to start drawing this project. The first thing I'm going to start with is the letter U. And I'm going to draw kind of big. I want this U to take up most of my paper. Voila, the letter U. That's a good start. Now that I have my U and it is taking up most of the middle of my paper, I'm going to do a small letter V right about here. Then I'm going to close this V up, kind of like I'm putting a lid on it, and I can take my Sharpie and fill it in right now. Quick word of caution, if you are using Sharpie and printer paper like I am, you might notice that your Sharpie is bleeding through. If you're worried about bleeding through and hurting your table, you can always put an extra piece of paper underneath your project. Now that I've got this triangle, spoiler alert, this is going to be our lion's nose, I'm going to make the top part of his mouth. Now, a regular person has just a smile line for a mouth, but a lion's mouth is made out of a couple lines. I'm going to start right here. I'm going to poke right at the bottom of his nose, and I'm going to do a smile that curves all the way to the side of his head. One side down, one more to go. Same thing over here, but this time I'm going to curve this direction. And now our lion has his nose he's got his mouth. But you know, lions are known for having some big, ferocious teeth. So I think it'd be a good idea if we added those teeth in too. But let's start by making him open up those jaws. I'm just going to do a line across the bottom of his chin to make the bottom of his mouth. You can make it curve a little bit, or you can make a straight line. Whatever is easier for you. I'm going to make mine curve a little bit. There we go. And now his mouth is open, but he's got no teeth. That's going to make things kind of tough on him. We better grow some teeth right now. Now, this might seem obvious to some of you, but I like to point out that you've got 2 rows of teeth. A row that grows on the top and a row that grows on the bottom. So when you're drawing the teeth, make sure they're pointing the right direction. The ones that grow from the top point down. And I'm going to draw those with a couple of big letter V's. And then I'm going to do a row on the bottom. These ones point up. The lines I use kind of remind me of a letter A, but without the line going through the middle. Oh, that's a lot of teeth. Now, at this point, I could make an artist decision, an artistic choice. Am I going to color in his mouth black with my marker, or am I going to color it in red? I kind of think it would look cool colored in red, so I'm just going to leave it alone for now and move on to his cute little cheeks. Now, right here next to his nose, we're going to do a couple little dots that represent where his whiskers would grow. 1, 2, 3 on that side. 1, 2, 3 on this side. Now, a little artist tip for you. When artists are deciding how many of something to put into a picture, odd numbers for some reason are more pleasing to the eye than even numbers. I know, that makes no sense, but that's just the way it is. So I usually do things in groups of 3. Now that we've got the bottom part of our lion's face, we need to focus on the top. He's got a nose for sniffing, a mouth for tasting. He could use some eyes for seeing. But we're going to start with figuring out where his forehead is. Now we've got the top part of our U, but I don't want to start right up there. I'm actually going to find the top of my U and then scooch down just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to draw a line straight across to the other side. He's got a little bit of a unibrow right now, and that's okay. Now lions have big, strong bridges going down the middle of their face, connecting their forehead to their nose. So we're going to create the bridge of our lion's nose. It's pretty easy. I'm just going to touch the corner and then draw a line straight up. And then I'm going to touch the other corner and do another line straight up. Both of those lines stop when they get to that forehead line we drew. And now we're going to make some eyebrows. The top part of his eyebrow is already done, so I'm just going to scooch down and do a horizontal line that touches the bridge of his nose and the side of his head. And then I'm going to bounce to the other side and do the same thing. Now the closer you make this line to this line, the skinnier your lion's eyebrows will be. But if you push them all the way down here, he's going to have big bushy eyebrows instead. It's whatever you like. You can take these art instructions and change them up however you want. This doesn't even have to be a lion. You could turn this into a tiger or a jaguar or something, a person with a hairy problem. I don't know. There's lots of things you can do. So now we're going to do the eyes. For the eyes, I like to start with the pupil. That's the little black part of the eye you see in the middle. To make the pupil, I just do a little U, and then I'm going to fill it in with Sharpie, but not all the way. I like to leave a little slice of white to be the highlight. Highlight is just where your light source is shining. It makes things look like their eyes are bright and awake and alive. So I always try to leave a highlight in the pupil on both sides. Right now he's got some beady little eyes. They're pretty cute, but I think he's going to need a little more detail. So let's do another U or semicircle that curves all the way around our pupils. This is going to be the iris. That's the part of your eye that's colored. And now that we've got the iris, we also need the white part of the eyes. The white part is pretty big, so I'm actually going to do a big smile that goes from the side of his head to the bridge of his nose on this side, and then another one on this side. It's looking pretty good, you guys. We've got a nose for sniffing, a mouth for tasting, eyes for seeing, but now he's going to need some ears for listening. That way he can listen to all my art instructions. We are going to start with the ear that goes right over here. I'm going to just do a letter C, and I'm going to make it so this letter C balances right on top of that U. Looks pretty good. I'm going to do the same thing over here, but this time this ear is going to be facing the other way, so it's a backwards letter C. Oh, swish. That's looking good. And now that we've already used the letter C, let's switch it up and use the letter O. I'm going to put an O right here. That's right, it's a circle. And then another O right here. Finally, I'm going to close the top of his head with a great big frown. I'm frowning because we're almost done. Boom. Now, obviously, our lion does not have any hair yet, which is great if you're drawing a girl lion. But we are drawing, at least I'm drawing, a male lion with a long flowing mane. And in fact, his mane is flowing and so long that it's going to go right off the paper. Now, I don't want to just do a bunch of streaks, because when you do a bunch of streaks to make hair, it never looks like quite enough. Instead, I'm just going to start making some stripes. It kind of reminds me of the rays on a sun. By the way, if you accidentally go off the paper and you get a little Sharpie on your table that you're drawing on, don't freak out. You can actually use a little bit of rubbing alcohol to get it off. I'm just going all the way around. These don't have to be perfect. Remember, this is just your first try. You could always do another line if you want. And now he's ready to color. He looks pretty good. Alright, you guys, well, it's time to start coloring in our lion. Now, I'm just going to be using plain old Crayola markers, though I will say these ones are the pipsqueaks. That makes them pretty cute and little, but you could use crayon, you can use watercolor, you can use colored pencil, whatever you have lying around the house will work. Now, for the lion, I like to use warmer colors. Lions have kind of a tawny color. That means they're like a tan or a light brown. So I'm going to pull out all of my warm colors and my brown neutrals for this project. Warm colors are colors that make you think of hot places. They might make you think of fire. They might make you think of cinnamon candy. They might make you think of the sun, which is a very hot place. All of those colors would work really well for a lion like this. So I've actually got just a couple of those, red, orange, yellow, 2 different shades of brown, and pink. I don't have white because my paper's already white. So anywhere that should be white in my finished picture, like the whites of his eyes, his highlight, or his teeth, I'm just going to leave alone. I'm going to go ahead and say that my lion's cheeks and his forehead and the outside of his ears and his chinny chin should all be the lightest color I have, which is yellow. So I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to color this in. Art teacher tip for you guys: when you're coloring in a large area, it's a good idea to start by going around the outside edge of the section you're focusing on. When you do the outside edge first, it allows you to get in all those little nooks and crannies. And once you actually have connected and gone all the way around the outside edge, all you have to worry about next is filling in that big, empty, white space in the middle of your paper, or the section you're coloring. Another helpful art teacher tip for you guys. When you're coloring, most of the time your hand is more used to going a certain direction. So instead of trying to turn your hand to color in a way that's uncomfortable for you, you should just rotate your paper instead. This guy's looking pretty good. Now when I color, there is another thing I like to do. Instead of just going back and forth with my marker, up and down like that, I actually color in circles. What that means is I take my marker and I kind of swirl it around in circles. I don't know exactly why, but it makes your coloring look a little bit more what we would call uniform. That means it looks even and tidy. This doesn't work with every art supply, but it works really well with colored pencils and with markers, so long as they're not drying out of ink. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so that I am at the end of coloring in all my yellow. Alright, all the yellow is finished, so I can go ahead and put that away. And I'm going to switch to using some orange. I like to use the orange for the bridge of his nose and his eyebrows. Alright. For the inside of his mouth, I'm going to use red. Black is also a good color choice. Remember, there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. If you accidentally color in one of your lion's teeth, it's no big deal. Maybe he has something caught in his teeth. I don't know. Just make up a story to explain why your lion looks the way he looks. I like to use pink inside of his ears. And then for his eyes, I'm going to use brown today. Now remember, the white part of the eyes you can leave alone. Your highlight and the pupil are also already done, so just focus on this area. Alright, we're almost there. The last thing we have to worry about is our lion's mane. For his mane, I like to use a mix of the different colors I already have. I'm going to use orange, light brown, and dark brown for his mane. And I'm going to make a pattern where I go all the way around using those same colors. So brown, this first. When you're coloring on the edge like this, it's a good idea to try and protect the surface you're working on. I don't think your mom and dad are going to like it if you get ink or crayon all over their dining room table after all. I just put an extra piece of paper underneath my project, and that will catch all the ink that goes off the edge of my paper. Liza Lions. I am finished and hopefully you are too. I hope you guys enjoyed this art lesson. I will talk to you later. Bye!